You may begin.
Okay, so I'm doing cycle of violence. It's on page 56. It's I killed him. He said slowly, I killed that boy. And I think he's like, I'm doing cycle of violence. I think it's something bad will always be followed, like find something worse. And this is like one of the many examples is like this when the song speed of Johnny and Playboy. And then Johnny like kills Bob, which leads to like everything that like a ripple effect. Because then everything else happens after that. So like the cycle of violence just keeps going as like they get into the rumble and then Johnny dies and then Gary dies and then it's just like an ongoing cycle of violence.
Okay, so I agree because after this, like, they go up to the mountain and then it's kind of bad for them because they have to cut their hair and that's like their pride and stuff. And then they go that down the hill and it says on page 61, there's an abandoned church on top of Jade Mountain. There's a pump in the back, so don't worry about water. So like, there's good stuff there, but they always run into bad things, like the burning churches.
Well, I disagree. I think it's, when he said it was cycle of violence, I think it's more fear and courage because you can tell that he's like scared that he actually killed him. And like below that, it says, Johnny, I managed to say, fine, business. I think I'm gonna be sick. Go ahead, he said the same steady voice. I won't look at you. And so you can tell that they're like terrified, but they actually could do it.
I agree with Jenny Lynn that it's fear and courage because on page 57 it says, yeah, his voice quavers slightly. I had to. They were drowning you, Benny. They might have killed you. And they had a blade. They were gonna beat me up. Like I swallowed like they did before. So, and it shows that like he didn't really want to kill Bob, but he just like was so scared and traumatized from what happened before that he reacted without thinking.
I disagree with Jenny Lynn and Alan because I see how it's fear, but he's not really showing any courage there. And because like on page 57 it says, yeah, his voice quavered slightly. I had to. They were drowning you, Penny. They might have killed you. Showing that like he was definitely really scared, but he didn't really have any courage.
I think that he did have courage because he like had to save Pony Boy, and so that took a lot of courage to like.
Yeah, I also feel like he also, are you done?
Oh yeah, I was finished.
Okay. I also feel like he did have courage when he decided to turn himself in at the police station because like he could have just hid out, but he decided to like be brave and because he didn't want to like suffer. He didn't want to make Pony Boy suffer anymore. So he decided he's gonna turn him in.
I can see how all that is, but I also feel like it's loss of innocence because like when this happened, it was kind of like it was the climax to when everything started going downhill, and that everything bad happened and made them like it says later in the book, it says stay gold, Pony Boy stay gold, and it's like saying that he needs to stay gold even though he's been through all of this.
I still think it's cycle of violence because on page 133, Steve says, I want to beat those sucks or associates heads in when I get into a fight. I want to stomp the other guy good. I like it too. So I think him like enjoying the violence kind of symbolizes the rest of them. They just want to get into fights and they always want to find trouble. They don't necessarily want to kill them. They want to find something to like do, and violence is that.
I agree because it is lost. Like I think it's lost innocence. I think he lost his innocence a lot before, so the cycle of violence had already started. Because on page 12, when it's talking about Johnny, it says his father was always beating him up and his mother ignored him except when she's hacking off at him, and then you could hear yelling from the house. And I think like all the greasers have like already been presented to them, so it will be.
I disagree. I don't think they want to kill him, because on page 56 it says, I killed him, he said slowly, Johnny did, and it shows that he didn't want to kill him, he didn't want to do violence, because I mean, him and Pony Boy went and did, so they didn't like,
I disagree. I think it's what Dylan and Alan said, and it's fear and courage because Johnny didn't kill Bob out of like just this like cycle of violence because everything bad happens. I do agree with that, but I think it's more fear because he killed him out of fear and out of what has happened beforehand, and that just caused all these things that happened caused him to kill Bob.
So like, we can tell that through like the murder and all of this like controversy between the socias and the greasers, do you think that like while all this is happening to the kids, do you think that like their parents grew up like this too? Grew up like fighting with the other groups and maybe even murdering the other people, like doing, like, do you think that their parents grew up living like that too, or is it just something that this new generation started?
I think that for the greasers, like I can't find the page, but most of their parents, like for example Johnny's like abusive, but like for the associates, Pony Boy says that the adults don't really understand like the conflict between the greasers and the social, so it's mainly between like the teenagers and adolescents.
I think
Yeah.
the greasers, you go ahead.
Okay, yes, I was just also, my like kind of reasoning behind that is when it says on page 164, his old man was rich, he could pay whatever fine there was for being drunk and picking a fight. So like, that's making me think that maybe the parents had some idea of what was going on.
I think they had an idea of what was going on. I just don't think they realized like the extreme that it was coming to, and that I think their parents used to fight like each other back then. But I also used to think like they were like killing people, and like they had money, but they don't have enough like reasoning behind it and knowledge behind it to know that it wasn't their kid's fault.
I kind of agree and disagree. I think the greasers' parents grew up like greasers, like how the greasers grew up, like killing people and everything, like not like the exact same like scenarios as like they had to go through like Johnny killing because he was killing like that stuff. But I think that the Sox, like their parents, the Socials could have grown up as either because like it always talks about how his older brother, Derry wanted to grow up and like get out of there, and so they like it's easier to be not easier, but like it's more likely that the Greasers could become a Sox than that the Sox could become a Greaser.
I kind of disagree with that because it describes Soda's and Tony's and Derry's parents is like nice and like they weren't really like fighters and they didn't really act like the Greasers do, and that could just be because they like were matured, but I think they just didn't grow up kind of the same way. They just grew up in a different time period where this wasn't as much of an issue.
Yeah, I agree because I don't think Johnny's parents would have like treated him so badly if they really knew what was going on. Because if they grew up as greasers, then I feel like they would have had more sympathy for Johnny.
I agree with Luke, because when we went back to social identification, I think it's like, or social identity theory, I think this represents social identification, because the parents would like join like the best, they think like the best group is all about beliefs in this book, like beliefs of who's the best and who deserves to have better stuff. And I think the parents would have sympathy if they like saw what went on, because you don't really see much of the parents, except you only meet Johnny's mother at the hospital, and that's the only parent you meet, and she doesn't really have like a good view on this.
I have a symbol on page 171. So my symbol is cigarettes.
What is it?
Cigarettes. And at the top of the page it says, "Big deal. I busted the end off my bottle and held on to the neck and tossed away my cigarette. You get back into your car or you'll get scared." So I think these cigarettes kind of represent like go along with the theme of loss of innocence, and also represent like what he was before, because in like multiple places, like earlier in the book, him and some other of the members of the gang would smoke a cigarette to feel like calm and whenever the socials came around. But in this example, like he tosses it away. Unlike any of the other times, it shows that he's like he's different in this scenario, and it's like showing his character development since Johnny and Dali's death have changed him from like an innocent person to like a like confident adult.
I agree with you because it's like, but I also like kind of disagree, but because like cigarettes, they've said like some of them don't smoke it, but when they do, like the rare time that they do is to look tough on the outside when the socials come around. So I feel like it's also like representing like a greaser stereotype per se, and like giving them this little like tough little bubble around them when other people come around. I feel like they're like getting in trouble or something.
I I agree. I think it's like a stereotype that all the greasers like are just kind of like function to do, because on page like 150 like 3 or 4, like around right before the rumble, it talks about how I think it was Two-Bit was a character has to like get like drink and like all that before like a rumble, but I don't think that's what the like cigarettes are like. I don't think they're for like confidence before anything. I think it's just something they do because they're like greasers, and that's just how they've been like customers. Everyone else around them does it. It's like how they grow up around violence, so they're like used to violence. And when they grow up with everyone like smoking, then they're used to it.
Yes, but if I agree with Alan, because well, those are valuable points. In the part, I don't know what pages, but in the part where Randy and Honeyboy are talking in the car, it says that Randy smoked a cigarette. So it's not really just, the cigarettes aren't really just the greasers. They also represent the socials too.
I agree with that. I think it's just a way for like everybody to just kind of calm down after like a big fight or something. Like after like Honeyboy got jumped and all that stuff. Like he always wanted to smoke, and I think he used it just kind of like calm down, and it would just kind of like de-escalate like the situation.
Going off of like,
I agree that it's loss of innocence because on the bottom of page 171 it says, Ponyboy, listen, don't get tough. You're not like the rest of us, and don't try to be. What was the matter with Two-Bit? I knew as well as he did that if you got tough, you didn't get hurt. So I think that he realized that, like, he smoked cigarettes to look tough, and he realized that he had to look like that because he's gotten hurt so many times because so many people have, like, thought of him as, like, the young one and, like, the little one.
so going off of what Jack said about like the cigarettes calming them down after like a fight, I have a question. So what do you think like the idea of tranquility or peace represents in the novel, since there's so much like trauma and like death? So like how does it develop?
I think. Go ahead.
I thought the sunset kind of helped develop that because when they were like sitting up on the church hill, there was like the calm, like when they were running away. So I feel like the sunsets are like a big like part of all like this small bit of like tranquility throughout the novel.
I agree, because on page 77 it says there was a silent moment when everything held its breath and then the sun rose. So I think they're significant because it's like even when we analyze like the poem, it was like we were saying it was a peace, like a moment of like their youth. So I think it's that moment of like peace before everything happened, and like none of the boys really experienced any peace because like they all lost their innocence so young, like getting arrested and like their parents being abusive and stuff. Which is why I think like the sunsets.
I agree that the sunsets represent peace and tranquility, because Alan said, or Jenny Lynn said it's like a slice of like tranquility and all like the darkness in your life. Because it says, I don't know where it says it, but it's like talking about how Cherry, when she takes out the trash, she stops and looks at the sunset and takes that moment of peace just like Honeyboy does. And I think it represents like a refresh, because sunsets, like the day, sunset and sunrise, because the day ends and then like a new beginning is what it represents.
I agree it's like peace, and because on page 129 it says, I'd help her and Randy both if I could. Hey, I said something, can you see the sunset real good from the west side? And this is basically saying how the sunsets, like Cherry and Honeyboy were just in a fight, and because of this he starts talking about the sunset, which was a way for them to like calm down, and a way for them to be able to like connect with each other again.
I have a symbol on page 148. And the quote is, "Stay cool, Honeyboy. The pillows seem to sink a little and Johnny got." And I think that gold symbolizes youth and good things in life. And this is important because it shows that Johnny is telling Honeyboy that nothing good in life can stay, and youth and innocence will leave.
I agree that like the gold is kind of like a good thing, but like it also doesn't like, well, it actually doesn't represent like good things, because like I feel like Wait, I think gold like can stay for a while because like I feel like Pony Boy kind of even like at the end he holds on to like the good things because this is after like he's like matured a bunch and seen this death, but like at the end he says like 1 week had taken all 3 of them and I decided I could tell people beginning with my English teacher. So it's like even though like he's like kind of lost his innocence, he's still like remembering like he's still trying to like do something good like out of this and tell people about it.
Or I think that gold can represent something good, because on page 77 it says nothing gold can stay, but that shows that while not everything good that happens will last, it's kind of like making gold be like the good thing that doesn't always last.
I think that content was talking about gold being used and not gold being more of like a moment of feeling or an object. I think it's cool. I guess you could. But go ahead.
I also think like it's used, like what Cynthia said. On page 178 says they're gold when you're a kid, like when you're a kid everything's near dawn. So it like shows that like kids and youth, like they have more youth than like when you get older and you're like more innocent.
I agree that it's innocence because on page 123 it says, I remembered my mother, beautiful and golden like soda, and wise and firm like dairy. I think that shows that she did like I think that shows that she was innocent and she wasn't like she wasn't a part of the gang, and she was kind, and I think that's how he remembers his mother.
Okay, we're gonna stop there.